Welcome to Peace Unplugged, where we explore how to create a greater inner well-being. I'm your host, Martin. Today, we're tackling a topic that affects all of us. That is, how can I manage my inner voice? You know what it is, that constant stream of thoughts that bug you all the time, keep you awake at night. The opinions, the criticisms. You know what it's like, it's always there, humming along in the back. For many of us, that inner voice becomes a harsh critic. It undermines our confidence and just generally generates an awful lot of anxiety. But consider this, what if we learn to manage it in some way that can be useful for the future? Today, we're going to dive deep into this subject, try to understand the inner dialogue that goes on in it, and to work out some strategies on how to manage it and how to make it possible, how to make it positive. So we're going to draw on some insights from some leading experts that I've researched, especially those in psychology and spirituality. Okay, so what is our inner voice? Is it just our thoughts? Or is it something more? Psychologist and neuroscientist Ethan Kross, author of Chatter, describes it as the persistent background noise generated by our mind. It's that internal monologue that often questions our decision, rehearses conversations, and amplifies our fears. He emphasises that when harnessed correctly, this same internal voice can be a powerful ally to us, helping us to reason through problems and to reflect on our experiences. So the challenge is not to silence it completely. To be frank, that's impossible. You see, our minds are designed to think. It's to change the way that we talk to ourselves. One of the most profound spiritual leaders and talkers of this age is a man called Eckhart Tolle. He offers a critical perspective on the inner voice, particularly the negative aspects of it. Tolle, author of The Power of the Now and A New Earth, highlights how most individuals unconsciously identify with their thoughts, believing that the voice in their head is who they are. This identification, he argues, is the root of much of our suffering. Eckhart Tolle's core teaching revolves around presence, the awakened state of consciousness that transcends ego and discursive thinking. He encourages us to observe the inner voice without judgment, to recognize it as a separate entity from our true self, which he refers to as being or presence. By bringing awareness to this voice and disidentifying from it, we create space for inner peace and true presence to emerge. He suggests that simply noticing the voice, rather than getting caught up in the narratives, when you notice it speaking negatively, simply acknowledge it and it brings your attention back to the present. And do this perhaps by focusing on your breath or your surroundings. Eckhart says this act of observing rather than engaging diminishes its power. Okay, so moving on from spiritual wisdom to some practical psychological techniques known as CBT, or cognitive behavioural therapy. This offers some concrete tools for managing the inner critic. CBT helps us to identify and challenge unhelpful thoughts and patterns, or what's known as cognitive distortions, that thing that actually fuels the negative self-talk. For example, our negative self-talk often engages in all or nothing thinking, or as I used to refer to it as black and white thinking. The sort of thing where we might say to ourselves, I messed up, so now I just must be a complete failure. Sometimes it's catastrophizing. If I don't get this right, nothing else is worth doing. My career's come to an end. I got to a situation like that a few years ago, where I was working quite well as a job for about 5 years, and then everything fell apart. And my thoughts were, I've just wasted 5 years of my life. This, of course, is rubbish because I hadn't wasted it at all. I'd actually learned an awful lot about myself at that point in my life. I didn't realise, actually, there was so much more to learn later on. Sometimes when things do go right, we just think, oh, well, that's just a bit of luck. Well, frankly, luck is not something that just comes along. Luck is something that we create. CBT encourages us to identify these negative thoughts, become aware of what your inner voice is actually saying, and to challenge them with evidence. Ask yourself, is there evidence to support this thought? What would a compassionate friend say to me in this situation? Transform critical inner dialogues into constructive self-talk. Instead of saying, I always mess up, try this. It's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn. So building on this idea of a compassionate inner dialogue, we now turn to the work of Dr. Christian Neff, a pioneering researcher. She was a pioneering, she is a pioneering researcher in self-compassion. Dr. Neff highlights that we often treat ourselves with a harshness we would never inflict upon a friend. Her framework for self-compassion has three core components. That is self-kindness versus self-judgment. Treating yourself with understanding and warmth when you suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring your pain or flagellating yourself with self-criticism. Then she mentions common humanity versus isolation, recognizing that suffering and personal inadequacy are part of the shared human experience. We all struggle. We all make mistakes. This helps us to reduce our feelings of isolation. There's mindfulness versus over-identification. Being aware of painful thoughts, being aware of painful emotions without getting swept away. It's about observing your feelings. Dr. Neff suggests practical exercises like writing a self-compassionate letter to yourself. I like to do this by doing a lot of journaling if I'm finding things are a bit of a struggle. It's about imagining what a kind friend might say, and even using physical gestures of warmth, such as placing your hand on your heart. This activates your own personal caregiving system. So how does mindfulness play into all of this? John Kabat-Zinn, the finder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, known as MBSR, teaches us that mindfulness is about paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. When it comes to the inner voice, mindfulness helps us to observe without reaction. Instead of getting entangled in the narratives of our inner critic, we learn to simply notice the thoughts as they arise, like clouds passing in the sky. We can create space by observing. We can create a vital gap between thoughts and our reactions to it. This space allows us to choose how we respond, rather than by being driven by automatic negative patterns. Mindfulness practices such as focusing on the breath or body sensations can ground us in the present moment, making it harder for the inner voice to pull us into past regrets or future anxieties. Kabat-Zinn emphasizes that we're not trying to stop thoughts, but rather to change our relationship with them. We can acknowledge them. We don't need to judge them. And essentially, we don't let them define us. So bringing this all together, how can we actively manage our inner voice starting today? Awareness is the first step. As Eckhart Tolle and mindfulness experts emphasize, simply noticing your inner voice without judgment is crucial. What is it saying? What tone does it take? Question that. Is what your inner voice saying truly factual? What evidence do you have for or against it? Challenge those automatic negative thoughts. Practice some self-compassion, as Christian Neff recommends. Talk to yourself as if you were talking to a friend, with kindness and compassion, with understanding. Remind yourself of common humanity. Ethan Kroos recommends used distanced self-talk. Sometimes referring to yourself in the third person or by your name can create psychological distance, allowing for more objective and less emotional perspective. Instead of saying, so I am anxious, I'll try using my name here. Martin is feeling anxious right now. That's interesting, isn't it? Ground yourself in the present. When the inner chatter becomes overwhelming, use mindfulness techniques like focusing on your breath. Focus on the sensations in your body. Activate the five senses. smell, taste, touch, hearing, feeling. Cultivate a different voice. Actively practice affirmations. It's good to reframe some of the negative self-talk. Reframe them into some constructive questions. For example, instead of saying, I can't do this, try, well, how can I approach this challenge in a different way? Remember, this is about practice. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes consistent effort. That way we can rewire our brain into some more positive ways of thinking. By integrating these insights from experts like Eckhart Tolle, Ethan Kroos, Christian Neff, and John Kabat-Zinn, we can begin to transfer our inner dialogue from a source of struggle into a powerful tool for growth and resilience and inner peace. Okay, so that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening in again. I encourage you to continue to listen to these podcasts and to give me some feedback as to what your thoughts are. Please enter those comments in below on the YouTube podcast. So until next time, bye for now. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow, like and share. Thank you very much. Martin, Peace Unplugged.